Welcome to Cactus Crossfire, your go-to for hot takes and prickly debates.
Welcome in, everybody, to Cactus Crossfire. I'm your host, Sisto Abeyta. Usually we're here with my esteemed colleague, Eddie, but right now, Eddie's stuck in trying to get legislation passed through in Arizona or Nevada. But luckily enough, we got a great replacement for him. Got my great friend, somebody I've known in New Mexico since I first moved to Albuquerque, candidate for governor, and our district attorney, Sam Bregman. Sam, how you doing?
Sisto, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, man?
Oh God, Sam, it's been good. It's legislative session season, it's political season, so I'm thriving right now. I'm getting fed every other day with some other great news story, and thank you so much for coming in, Sam.
My pleasure.
I've been a huge fan of yours for a lot of years. Actually, you're one of the first campaigns I ever worked on when you ran for mayor, and then
awesome.
And then your city council race, your reelection race. But one of the things that I enjoyed on your campaign was hanging out with your dad. Your dad, Stan, and I had a very unique passion for horse racing.
You were both horse racing degenerates.
I still am.
So am I.
So I used to love hanging out with your dad and visiting with him over at the Downs, and he had just such a great different perspective from his time in the party and where we were headed, and even some of the stuff we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
Your dad had a unique perspective on that, and I just enjoyed the time we spent with him. But we do a lot of talking about our dads on this show, and I wanted to ask you, how was your dad's all that political knowledge that your dad had influencing on you?
Oh, he had such a huge influence on me. In fact, I think he still does. I
Yeah.
think about all the time, what would my dad say to this problem that I'm facing one way or another? My dad was very special in my life, in my kids' lives. We lost him to, I don't know, probably about a decade ago, but he was instrumental in my life. Hubert Humphrey introduced my mom and dad.
Really?
My dad was the national president of the Young Democrats back in the Washington, D.C. area, way back when.
Yep.
He was very close with Mondale. He was very active in the Democratic National Party, and he was a big fan of mine, and I was a huge fan of his. So
Yeah.
we were very, very close and very tight. And I'm glad you got to spend some quality time with him, because the knowledge of politics and horse racing and sports and baseball, I think we can all owe a lot of gratitude to him for making all that happen, right?
And your dad, when I became president of the Young Democrats here in New Mexico, he's kind of the guy that when I would see him at the track, he would tell me, hey, these are things that you need to think about. These are states that you need to be looking at. And he loved when I was at national conventions and I'd run into him and he's like, how did it go? What was it like? I remember back in the day. And I said, they're a lot tamer now.
They were. Listen, remember, he was Hubert Humphrey and Fred Harris and him were the convention chairs for Hubert Humphrey back at the '68 convention in Chicago.
Yeah.
And all those protests and all those things going on back then. It was something else.
Yeah, and your dad was one of those guys that he took a lot of those lessons, especially around civil rights and just human rights in general. And he was just a really big, staunch supporter of making sure that people were seen and heard, no matter what walk of life you came from. And I know that your dad meant a lot to you, and your dad meant a lot to me, and I appreciated those times. But
Yep.
I mean, you're coming to the table now with almost 30 years in politics in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the time when we're, back when you were serving on the city council, and I remember knocking on doors for you.
Thank you, by the way, still.
Well, but one of the things that was interesting to me is that, I'm this little brown kid from the South Valley out knocking on doors. And one of the coolest things, I came back and I was devastated because, folks were wondering why this brown kid was walking around knocking on doors in the Northeast Heights of Albuquerque. And I told you, Sam, I love you, but I can't knock in your district anymore. And I just remember how upset you were, not because of that I was not going to walk for you anymore. You were upset because people didn't want a kid like me in your neighborhood.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's awful to still think that. And listen, I mean, I'm very proud of some of the work we got done on the city council. We passed the first hate crimes. I sponsored and passed the first hate crimes ordinance in this state's history way back in 5 or 7, whatever it was. But these issues are core issues for me. And you were just mentioning my dad. I mean, the country that I grew up in right now, and I hate to go off on a tangent here, but the country that I grew up in isn't the same what I'm watching going on up in Minnesota right now. I'm horrified.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing, and civil rights and human rights, they need to still mean something. And the Fourth Amendment needs to mean something. And I'm very frustrated. And your story about knocking on doors up in the Northeast Heights back in the day, that was unacceptable then, and it's unacceptable now. We can't be pulling people over because of the color of their skin or because of their accent. That's crazy.
Well, I've worked on the accent part, Sam, over the year, but it's something that I think in reality folks don't realize that we're still struggling with a lot of the same issues that we've been dealing with for 30 years. And that's kind of where you're headed in saying enough is enough.
Yes.
And right now, the Trump administration has been doing a lot of things in regards to ICE, and you've kind of made a bit of a splash and putting the president on notice about, if you guys are coming into New Mexico, you better play by the rules.
110%. And I'm dead serious about it. I want people to understand this is one of those core values for me. This is the civil rights and the human rights of people is extremely important to me. I've been like that since day one. I've fought for civil rights in and out of federal and state courts my entire adult life. And I'm going to keep doing it. And no one is above the rule of law. Just because you have a badge and gun doesn't mean you get to restrain, confine, detain someone just because you want to check their papers. I mean, this stuff reminds me of the 1930s in Europe where show me your papers.
Yeah.
This is crazy stuff going on right now. This is not the American, I can tell you, it's not the New Mexico and it's not the future of New Mexico.
You really have. And I mean, that's carried over to you were tapped to be DA by the governor after our prior DA became Attorney General. But were you on the Organized Crime Commission before or after?
No, after I was appointed chair of the Organized Crime Commission.
Then they bring you in and they say, okay, and I don't think it's just because we wear these black hats, Sam, that they think that we're going to be the ones that can clean it all up. I think it
doesn't hurt any.
It doesn't hurt anything. It just, it's a fashion statement at this point for both of us. But you're the chair of the Organized Crime Commission, and Trump has talked a lot about being tough on crime, and part of the reason why he's having these crackdowns is supposedly he's going after the worst of the worst that are in those groups that he's targeting. What can you say to that point here in New Mexico and what we've done?
Absolutely, extremely important. If you commit a violent crime, I don't care what your immigration status is. I'm going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law and hold you accountable. It does not matter to me your immigration status. If you're committing violent crime here in Albuquerque or Bernalillo County, as the DA, I'm going to absolutely hold you accountable. But what he's done is, and I understand the original premise was we're going to go after the worst of the worst. I mean, my understanding is only about 14% of the people that they've taken into custody have actually had previous criminal records or were wanted for some kind of crime.
Yeah.
So that is very concerning in itself. But I will tell you, this whole idea that we're going to round up everybody is the exact opposite effect on fighting crime. I fight crime every single day with law enforcement and with 120 prosecutors in my office that do an amazing job. But if you start telling an immigrant community that we're coming after you, what happens is we have witnesses and victims who will not come forward because they're scared to testify about the person that raped them, for example, because they don't want their family or themselves deported. That doesn't do anything to catch bad guys. To the contrary, it hurts our ability to go after, catch, and convict bad people.
And, at the end of the day, Sam, the funny part is with the feds, they always have these grandiose ideas, and then there's always this constant threat of, either you use state resources to help us do this, or we're not going to help you out. You're running for governor, and that's going to be a major play where you're going to have to push up against this administration, and if elected, and say, hey, we're going to comply with what's within the law, but we're not going to be held captive by what are your thoughts on that?
We're never going to interfere with law enforcement operations intentionally or anything like that. I will tell you that I work and we continue to work. My office and our special agents work with federal agencies all the time. Right now, Triple Beam, Operation Triple Beam, we have special agents working with the U.S. Marshal's Office on getting the worst of the worst, the people who are out there with warrants for violent felonies, picking them up and holding them accountable. We do that every single day, and I'm very grateful to so many of our federal law enforcement partners. But as far as using local or state resources for immigration enforcement, we have too many crime issues as it is, okay?
Yeah.
We're not gonna spend, that's number one, we're not gonna spend any resources on things that aren't actually affecting and making a difference in people's safety.
Yeah.
That's number one. The biggest job when it comes to fighting crime is making sure our community is safe.
Yep.
That's number one. Number two, it's not the place of state government or local government to be doing immigration enforcement. That's the federal government's job. We want secure borders. We want borders that do not have criminal activity going one way or another. On the Organized Crime Commission, we work every day on human trafficking issues, on fentanyl trafficking issues, on gun smuggling issues. Those are all, that's something I want to work with our federal partners on, but not on immigration status and not doing these roundups with no probable cause, reasonable suspicion, or warrant. That's crazy stuff.
Well, and I mean, I think that at the end of the day, hearing that coming out of candidates that are out there in the public forum is important, but not to us as just as New Mexicans, but to us as citizens, is that we're going to have somebody that's going to have our back. And and in that front, I can sit across the table from you and I can say I know that Sam will have our back on that front. So I mean, I appreciate that from you.
110%. Again, I will tell you that it's very important that we have the next governor needs to be someone who's going to stand up for all New Mexicans.
Mhm.
Push back on Trump where the things that he does or the chaos coming out of Washington that hurts New Mexicans, we absolutely need to stand up, push back, fight back, go to court, do everything we possibly can do to stand up and make sure we're using the bully pulpit and every other tool we can. But at the same time, we have to stand up for our people right here.
Yeah.
Right? We have to make sure that we're fixing crime, that we're fixing education, that we're taking care of our fragile healthcare system, and we're making sure we have economic opportunity and development for our families, for our kids, when they become adults.
And I mean, you're bringing up a great point. I mean, we went through a federal shutdown where Democrats were holding the line on health care because they were concerned that the tax extensions were not going to be met and that we were going to not fund Medicaid. And New Mexico's heavily reliant on Medicaid. I think it's over 40% of the
Right
entire
at 40%. Right at 40.
The state is on Medicaid. Of our citizens are on Medicaid and are dependent on Medicaid. And how do you as governor make sure that when those cuts are going to be coming, that we have a system that we're going to help these families succeed and that we're going to, how would you respond to that?
So, Sisto, let me tell you, you're exactly right. We have a real issue. This big, beautiful, I call it the big, beautiful BS bill that came out of Washington right now, and the chaos coming out of Washington far too often is unacceptable. The slashes to Medicaid, which has a direct, immediate impact on the health of New Mexicans, is unacceptable. And I applaud the legislature and the governor. They came into special session before this session that we're in now.
Yeah.
They came in, they filled some gaps because it's too important not to recognize the fact that we can never let any New Mexican slip through the cracks. And I will continue to make sure that we don't. We've got to continue to fight for every Medicaid dollar, every healthcare dollar we can get out of Washington. It's too expensive not to, but at the same time, we've got to make sure we've got their backs, every New Mexican's back, and I will.
And part of that is like, I hear from a lot of physicians and I hear from anybody really in the medical field about how we're one of the few states that actually taxes medical services. Like we're one of two in the entire country. And we had Speaker Martinez here, and I adore Speaker because he's one of these guys that's one of those things that he can really get into the weeds about because he served as chairman of tax. If you're governor, you're going to have a chance to influence that. And so what are your thoughts on that issue?
I want to, right off the bat, we do need to have a sense of urgency when it comes to our doctors, our healthcare providers. It's not just doctors. We're short 6,000 nurses. But the idea that New Mexico is only one of 2 states that continues to charge tax on medical services
Yeah.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous because if you're a doctor in Texas, you make 8% more money right off the bat than you do if you were going to practice in New Mexico. So where would you choose just based on that alone, right?
Exactly.
That's a big difference. So we need to do away with gross receipts tax. We do need to on medical services. We need to do away with it yesterday. And we have to have this sense of urgency because there's a lot of things we can do to recruit and retain doctors and healthcare providers. One of them that's just glaring us right in the face is this gross receipts tax, as you just brought up.
And the funny part is like what cracks me up is because, here we are, a couple guys in cowboy hats, and it's not like we don't know what rural New Mexico is really like. I said I came from rural New Mexico to the big city simply because there was more opportunity for me here. But growing up in that community, I was still forced to drive in a larger community. I grew up in a small town called Viguita, and I had to drive into Belen to get medical services, which was still a half an hour to 45 minutes away from where I lived.
Yeah.
And a couple years back, we were able to get a small community health center there, but we weren't able to maintain it because the population supposedly wasn't there. There wasn't enough patients for them to see. How are you going to resolve that issue in small towns like Viguita, New Mexico, where there's these healthcare deserts that we need access to affordable healthcare?
Well, let's first of all recognize also that they're debating right now up in the legislature, and I think they passed one of the compacts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The compacts are extremely important, and we should be passing all of them. The reason is, for example, just basic telehealth, mental health, behavior health, for example. To be able to get on a Zoom call with a psychiatrist or psychologist, to be able to talk to them about what's going on and with you. And not having a doctor go, no, I can't do that because I'm not licensed technically in New Mexico, despite the fact that I'm licensed in 5 other states. It's kind of ridiculous. We're limiting ourselves. And you know why it is so important that we make sure we protect care of rural health? And of course, the number one priority is the health and well-being of the patients. But if we lose our healthcare systems in our rural areas, and those hospitals shut down, you're not just shutting down healthcare, you're shutting down economies. Some of these local communities, the hospital is what the economy is really based on in many ways. So it's not just healthcare, it's the economy. And then when you look back at what it does to our urban areas like Albuquerque and Santa Fe, we get emergency rooms that are just completely filled, coming out of every seam, and that's not acceptable either.
And I mean, we saw it during the pandemic, right?
Yep.
I mean, there were so many rural communities where things were happening, and they just overloaded the metro system's healthcare providers and made it really tough. So we know what it looks like, we know what happens, and so I think that that's definitely going to be one of the bigger issues. But the other part of it is that UNM has a medical school, the University of New Mexico. And we do, and some people call it, the Johns Hopkins of the Southwest. Like they call UNM Law the Harvard on the Rio Grande. But our students don't stay. What's driving them out of the state, Sam?
Well, just in general, our kids don't stay like they should be staying.
Yeah.
Let's do a heck of a lot better. Another point that I want to talk about, retaining and in recruiting doctors, this medical school graduates you just mentioned. Every year that they practice medicine in the state of New Mexico, we should be reducing or eliminating 1 year of their medical school debt. So that after 5 years, a doctor doesn't have any more medical school debt. And I know you know this, but some of these medical students that get out and become doctors, they have $500,000 worth of debt.
Yeah.
And that is, if we want to compete with our surrounding states, because every state needs more doctors, we're the only state losing doctors right now, we better be very competitive. Competitive when it comes to, for example, reducing medical school debt every year, giving a tax credit for medical malpractice premiums, giving a tax credit for practicing in rural health, making this the most attractive place there is. And we can do that.
And we're talking about that in the context of when these doctors graduate and they've completed their education, but still here in New Mexico, and we lose our best. And you're not saying anything that none of us know. we lose our best and our brightest. But, New Mexico ranks near the bottom in regards to education. And, a few years back, a good friend of yours and mine, Governor Richardson, created the public education department. And we had a constitutional amendment that the voters voted on and created that department. But there's two departments within the state of New Mexico that the public feels are failing them. And so who has to be the one that's going to fix education? Is that the governor? Is that their appointee? Who bears that responsibility about education in New Mexico?
At the end of the day, I think the buck stops with the governor.
Mhm.
And listen, this is no criticism of our current governor whatsoever. But I do believe we have to improve a lot of things in education. I know she's worked hard on this issue, but there are things I think we need to focus on. And number one, it starts with accountability. We need to hold everybody accountable in our system, whether or not it's our school districts, whether or not it's our administrators, our teachers, our parents, and our students.
Mhm.
When we need to have absolutely transparent goals set up by every school district to say, this is our goals. We're going to have these graduation rates. We're going to have these success rates when it comes to literacy at third grade, when it comes to math skills at third grade. And then we're going to come back out 3-4 months later and show them what the results are and constantly update and then hold people accountable. And when we have a school that is struggling, when we have classrooms that are struggling, that's when we send in PED to make sure they have the super tutors on the grounds, the master teachers helping out to making sure, and we're identifying them at first and second grade.
Yeah.
Because we all know that at third grade, if you're not at the reading level, the chances are you're going to struggle throughout the rest of your schooling, K through 12. And that is a real problem. And by the way, one of the other things that we have to address is our chronic absenteeism. We're the number one state in the union for kids not being in the schoolhouse, percentage-wise.
Yeah.
But that by itself may seem like a common sense thing, but we have to work on that.
Yeah.
We have to make sure our kids are in school, because if they're not, and we saw what happened in COVID, we all lost years. The whole country lost years in education because of COVID, because kids weren't in school. And I get that certain instances where you can use the computer to learn. I get all that as far as the virtual learning, but really, we all know that the best opportunities for our kids to really prosper are being right there in the classroom.
And it's funny that you're kind of one of the first guys that I've ever heard talk that's run for governor that's talking about the absentee issue, and how huge it is. I'm constantly, everybody. I'm the black sheep in the family. I'm the only one that's not an educator on my dad's side, but I do education policy, right? So I hear constantly about our teachers being overwhelmed about having to track the kids down.
Yeah.
You probably remember a time when there was a mechanism that we used to have, that we used to be able to actually, when the kids were not in school, APD, sheriff's department, knock on the door. Here, we're bringing you into court, and you're going to explain to us why your kid's not in school.
You know why it's so important? I'll give you a perfect example. I gave a commencement speech at a public charter school, and I think the world of public charter schools. I think they're fantastic. But 49 graduates. Every single one of them was either going into the military, going into a trade school, a vocational school, a 2-year community college, or a 4-year school. Why, I asked the head of school, why are you so successful with this? They said, because we work with the parents on getting the kids in the door. That's the first step. And it seems like a simple step.
Yeah.
But we know in our rural, big, huge state that we have, and the distance between rural areas, and that this is a big issue. And it's not the senior who's in high school who's going to go joyride with his girlfriend down the road or whatever. It's fourth graders who aren't in school for 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And we need to instill a sense in, I think, the entire state and all of our parents and our communities of how important education really is.
Yeah.
We need to have a governor who's making sure that they're letting folks know that education is the key.
Yeah. I mean, I even though I jest that, I'm the black sheep in the family, from a very young age, I was told there's one thing nobody can ever take away from you, and that's an education.
Yep.
Right. And so, a lot of the times, the way we get that education is we're dependent on a lot of these federal dollars that come down, especially in a state like New Mexico, where we do spend a big chunk of our budget on education, an exorbitant amount of money on our our education budget. But those federal dollars are leveraged to help us to fill these gaps, right?
Yes.
So, this administration has done everything possible. The Trump administration has done everything possible to try to dismantle the Department of Education, but also to dismantle funding for states. You as governor are going to have to deal with that, and this Trump administration. How are you going to take that on?
Well, listen, the cruelty overall coming out of Washington, whether or not it's ICE, whether or not it's cuts to environmental policy, cuts to education, completely upside down chaos coming out of Washington. You're right, states, and the governor really is the last firewall.
Yeah.
The last firewall to make sure that we are standing up, holding the line, and making sure New Mexicans aren't slipping through the cracks. We have so many challenges as it is. The last thing I think we all can agree on that we really needed was a dysfunctional federal government that just wants to be mean, sometimes just for the sake of being mean and cruel,
Yeah.
which is out of control as far as I'm concerned. But we have to hold the line.
Well, and I mean, the biggest part is that, New Mexico and New Mexicans, so many New Mexicans are still living way below the poverty level. And, we're constantly looking for innovation in how we help uplift those folks. You actually have a pretty innovative idea of, a $10,000 launch pad accounts for babies. And it's gotten a little bit of attention, and you've gotten some criticisms from some of my friends on the Legislative Finance Committee and other areas that this is too expensive.
Well, it's, a lot of things are expensive in this world. And I will tell you, I have those same friends on the Legislative Finance Committee, and I get it, but we can't afford not to do certain things. We can't afford not to help our young people, give them the kind of start. Listen, I get it. You cannot solve every problem with money. We've got to buckle down on a lot of issues. But here's the other deal, though. We are poor individually when it comes to our salaries, when it comes to our wages, when it comes to our families in this state. But we're not a poor state. We have $65 billion. It might be $69 billion by now, but $69 billion. We have the second largest wealth fund in the country. So I think a little bit of investment in our young people to give them a chance to make sure they have the education, whatever they may decide to do in graduate school, postgraduate school, make sure we're giving them all the career path opportunities for trades, to be an electrician, a plumber, an engineer. We're going to wake up. It's going to be like blinking our eyes. We're going to wake up, and the technology of the future is going to be right around the corner. We want to make sure all of our kids have the opportunity to participate, whether or not it's opening a small business, launching another technology company. I mean, we have all the brain power in the world in this state. We have Los Alamos National Labs, Sandia National Labs, UNM Quantum Research, Tech just down south, New Mexico State. We have all the opportunity. We have all the energy that we need to get that done. We've got to make sure we have all the water, which we will. We'll get all this done. And what I'm getting at is I'm thrilled about the prospects of New Mexico's future. We just have to have the leadership to get it done.
And you touched on it now a little bit about water. I mean, you saw that when you were on council. You guys did a lot of things on city council back then to ensure the water viability of the city of Albuquerque.
Sisto, I'm amazed by your memory because that was so long ago. My gosh, that was at least a couple of beers ago. I love the housing topic is something I could talk on forever. I really do love this subject. Home ownership has always been in this country the pathway to the middle class. Because not only are you making that monthly payment like you would do rent, but you're building equity. You're building value in that home. That down the road, and there were some years that I made more money in my home's value than I did in practicing law that year. And the important part was I was building more and more value, so it gave me the opportunity when my family grew, I could expand. And we could keep expanding. And I will tell you, that's how people build wealth in this. That's what really was the middle class was built on, and so much was home ownership. I have a plan for that. I do believe that you're exactly right. Too many people, Rents are expensive. We all know that. They're able to pay their monthly rent, but because the rent is so high, they can't save anything for the down payment that they're going to need to buy that starter home, for example.
Yep.
And it's because of that, I think we need to get a little creative in the state. We need to actually help people with down payment assistance. And the way to do that is you set up a fund, and that fund does the following. If you've got decent credit, if you qualify for the house in every other way except you need the down payment, the state loans you the money to do they have a second mortgage on that down payment money. Let's say it's $35,000 or whatever on a $350,000 house perhaps right now. It's an interest-free loan. As long as you live in that home or until you sell it, and when you sell it or live in it, you have to live in it or you sell it. Once that happens, you pay back that second mortgage. But in the meantime, you've built enough equity that you can make that downstroke on the next house that you want to buy.
Yep.
And that is I think that's thinking out of the box a little bit, but affordability is a huge issue in this state right now. We have to get our hands around the whole housing issue, the rental issue, because what happens is all those renters that can't get into a starting home, they're stuck there.
Yep.
And all the people that need those apartments to move into that apartment, they can't get in there because there's no vacancy.
Yeah.
That can change. We need to change that. We need to get creative and we need to work towards it.
And Sam, recently there was a couple of news stories about, a couple of rental properties here in town where, bad actor type of companies, right, that are coming into town. And the legislature was very proactive in saying, renters are responsible and they're on the hook to do these things. I know that the DA isn't going to go out and prosecute these guys for being bad actors, but I'm sure you can maybe pick up the phone and call the former DA, who's our AG, who's kind of got this in his wheelhouse, and work together to kind of help folks that are stuck in those spaces of trying to get, trying to get affordability, but at the same time, if they're choosing to stay there, that they're staying in safe spaces. Do you have any plans on working on any of that? Or?
Well, Sisto, listen, we obviously have our hands full. It's not that I don't have any plans on it, but we're gonna work with the Attorney General on any and all things that we believe we need to hold people accountable, and I'm all for that. And I will tell you, of course, and always, as my prosecutorial duties are, I'm going to only do things that are a reflection of someone violating a law, a specific law. You have to have evidence and prove that to be the DA before you bring charges. As your next governor, I'm going to advocate very strongly to make sure that not only are people living in safe areas in every way, crime and everything else, but that we're not seeing the kind of predatory behavior by certain individuals that's out there.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and that's what you call leadership, Sam. I mean, you got to step up and, you've been in, the hardest part for a lot of folks over the years, and myself included, is we've been leaders in the Democratic Party, right? You've been party chair. I was president of Young Democrats. And sometimes we just had to speak truth to our colleagues on the other side, right?
Yes.
And we're a Democratic majority state. But in that is the criticism works reverse for Trump, right? Trump has the House, he has the Congress and everything else, and he gets to shove a lot of stuff down our throats. And, including the fact that we have a lot of federal disaster areas here that have happened in New Mexico. And, he may or may not withhold federal funding in regards to getting that done. And right now you're hearing it, I know, from a lot of folks up in San Miguel County about how that process has been slow. Yes, as governor, what are your plans to deal with that when you get there?
If you just think back, though, and it wouldn't have been that long ago when anybody, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, whatever you are, moderate, independent, would be absolutely outraged. Everybody would be outraged if we had a federal government that was doling out disaster funds based on whether or not you're a red or a blue state.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about, it makes my stomach sick to think that people's lives, people's well-being, people's mental health, physical health, people's families rely on disaster relief. And what's going on in FEMA up north, we just saw recently also at the local head of that, who's obviously got himself in some trouble. There's a lot of people asking him to put himself at the front of a line, apparently, to getting funds. disaster relief should never be political. It should be about based on need, on helping people that have been hurt by a natural disaster. A fire, we can do so much better with what we're doing when it comes to FEMA. But and I know this governor's been very vocal about, and so have some of our federal legislators. They've been very vocal about what's going on with FEMA. I'm going to do everything I can to help out the people of northern New Mexico that are still recovering from those disastrous fires.
So, Sam, I know that you're a tough guy. Okay, it's not just a hat, right? I've seen you in action over 30 years in New Mexico politics. You don't back down when it's something that you really are passionate about, and you're not going to back down.
Nope.
But a lot of folks think that, you know, it's just the black hat, it's just this rhetoric. You're coming on TV, and you know, I laugh a lot of times when people give me a hard time about you riding the horse, because I'm like, I've never known Sam not to ride a horse, so I don't know.
I've been riding a horse my whole life.
I'm like, I don't know where you guys got that from, but I've seen his dad. His dad has shown me the video. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. But a lot of the times, folks think that this is just an act, and how are you gonna deal with another tough guy out of DC? You know, who's never dealt with the things that we're dealing with here in New Mexico if you're governor?
Well, listen, we're gonna stand up to Donald Trump every single time we need to. Anytime the chaos coming out of Washington, whether or not it's Donald Trump caused or anybody else causes it, when it's hurting New Mexicans, you've got to push back, got to stand up, got to be strong, can't back down. I believe that. As many people know, I've represented people my whole life. Yeah. I've stood up for the little guy. I've stood up for the little guy who is, for no fault of their own, hurt in a terrible accident, for no fault of their own, or just were wrongfully terminated in employment, or were unjustly accused of a crime for something they didn't do. I've stood up for that little guy when everybody else was coming down on him. I have loved and cherished my ability to stand up for all of Bernalillo County, prosecuting violent criminals all day long. Love that. At the same time, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to stand up for every New Mexican, every single New Mexican, to make sure that we're in a place that truly is the land of enchantment. We all know that this place has the most amazing potential, but we've never lived up to that potential in New Mexico. I think everybody will agree with that. We've never quite lived up to everything we can be. We can be such a spectacular, wonderful place. I'm so excited about the future in New Mexico, but we have to have tough people. We have to have people that show leadership. We have to have people that aren't going to back down, and we have to have people that get stuff done.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see happen.
Well, you want to get stuff done. So, Sam Bregman, here's the $1 million question that everybody usually has for for guys who are running for governor. Yeah. Let's say you get elected. Sam Bregman wins the election. Sam's our next governor of the state of New Mexico. You got the first 100 days. What are your priorities in the first 100 days as governor?
Well, there's a lot of them, but let's go through it, because there's a lot of things we need to get done, and we need to have a sense of urgency. Right off the bat, I want to make sure that we get all of our police departments, both local, state, and federal, working together on the same page. We need to make sure we're sharing intelligence better. There's a lot of things we can do with law enforcement. We need to start an immediate recruiting process to get more cops on the street. Very much in favor of that. Behavior health and mental health is huge when it comes to public safety. It's huge when it comes to our quality of life. We have to have a coordinated behavioral health treatment center. We haven't really talked about this yet. Treatment plan. So when I say that, I mean, we have a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, whether or not it's addiction recovery, just straight up mental health issues, but none of it seems coordinated. When we see the social worker go out to a homeless encampment and someone wants help, they should have an iPad in their hand that shows where every available bed is in the state. They should be able to take that person right then and there to get them the help. That should be in live time, real time, a dashboard up on the Department of Health, because behavior health and overall addiction recovery and behavior health is so important to getting people off the streets. It deals with our homeless issue. It deals with our crime issue. It deals with bettering the quality of life of people that live here. That's one big issue. Education, we've got to get a sense of urgency when it comes to educating our kids better. We need an all hands on deck. Everybody we've mentioned already, whether it's parents, kids, teachers, administrators, school districts, we really need to put an emphasis on transparent goals and what we're doing as far as whether or not we're getting it done. Healthcare system, we need to get more doctors in this state. We need to get more nurses in this state. We have a shortage. We always talk about doctors, rightfully so, but we're also short 6,000 nurses. We need to get more healthcare workers here. We're going to have to work on that. We have to make healthcare more affordable and accessible. Economic development, we need to bring everybody together. But I've failed, and it's my fault to mention there's more than just this Rio Grande Valley. There's a tremendous amount of tribes out there. There's a tremendous amount of rural areas out there that we need to pay attention to. Yeah. We need to start collaborating better. There is such a divide, unfortunately, in this state between the rural and the urban areas and their politics and everything else about it. We need to start bringing people together and start working together for the betterment of every person in this state.
You know, Sam, one of the things that I've enjoyed watching you over the last 30 years is that a lot of politicians don't change their rhetoric. They kind of get in one lane and stay there. You've always been able to take a position on one side and then you look at it differently, you know, down the road. And one of those is that when gaming passed in New Mexico, one of the big, and I'm glad you're bringing up the tribes, because one of the things was that you had opposed Indian gaming when it first came out, right?
Well, I was a city councilor and at the time, and yes, I did make some statements that I thought it might hurt some industries, but obviously I've been able to take another look at that.
And that's the interesting thing. Okay, a lot of politicians won't own up to that, and that's taking responsibility for, you know, when you're wrong. So when things aren't working, what are the metrics you're going to work as governor to say this is how I'm going to be effective?
So number one, it's bringing people together and having a real collaboration. And it's just like I run the DA's office right now. I surround myself with really smart, capable people. I tell them where I want the results, where I want to see us go, and then go get those results. And if you're having trouble or need help, come back and see me. I'll come up with crazy ideas at 2 a.m. and tell them the next morning, what do you guys all think about this? And they have the comfort level to say, that's the stupidest idea we've ever heard. So therefore, don't do that, boss.
Yeah.
But I want people to have that kind of freedom. But we have to have a sense of urgency. These are problems that we really have to, and not with that sense of urgency goes a sense of accountability. Yeah. We have to hold everybody responsible. Leadership, whether or not it's out of the governor or whether or not it's out of the various departments and agencies that we work, all of those departments, all of those agencies have one customer. It's the people of New Mexico.
And you know, Sam, so our DA's office, when you took over, one of the biggest problems that we had was that, you know, things weren't getting filed on time. We were missing deadlines, all those things. And I could see the issue. I knew what the problem was. What I appreciated when you came in, you saw it right away. And you corrected it almost immediately. And it was not that the fact that you needed more attorneys, which you still got, but you recognized that the ancillary staff was missing, that you needed more paralegals, that you needed more legal secretaries. And does that come from your own practice of having, you know, a successful practice that you, and by the way, everybody, Sam did have a very successful law practice before he started this, but at the same time,
it comes from some of that.
Yeah.
It comes from having a knowledge of knowing who really gets the work done in that support staff so many times. And we have an amazing support staff at the DA's office. We have 330 employees, about 120 lawyers as we speak today. They all do such amazing work. We were just ranked as one of the top 10 places to work in all of New Mexico. I'm so proud of that. We changed the culture. We changed the dynamic. People get up in the morning, are happy to go to work. We've given lawyers discretion. We've given people a great place to work. And I acknowledge all the difference they're making in the community. We talk about it all the time at the office.
And that's, to me, that's one of the greatest things about you is that even though you've been at odds with different people politically over the years, you've taken the best ideas and the best parts of them and used that to be better than walking in the door. And quite frankly, I mean, right now, you know, we just had the passing of your former boss, Jeff Romero. And he was the DA, and you worked for him for a little bit of time.
I did.
And he thought that sometimes you may have said a few things that were brash or whatever, but you really have run that office more efficiently than what he could have ever have dreamed, right?
Sisto, let me tell you, I pride myself on making sure that I hear every voice. If someone has a good idea, I don't care if it's a good idea that'll work, that'll help prosecute crime in when we're talking about the DA's office or help the people of New Mexico, I'm going to take that and run with it and see if we can't implement it. I don't care where it comes from. I want all the good ideas in the world. Nobody has a lock, a monopoly on good ideas out there. There's plenty of them. We know that because just look at the way our state is evolving. Our high-tech possibilities in the future are going to be incredible. That's because people with great brain power are coming up with new, wonderful ways to make our lives all better.
You know, Sam, and I know that you're one of those guys that when you hear a great idea, because I've seen it happen, you know, like, hey, play the 6, 7, 8 horse.
Well, that was blind luck. That was blind luck. And if you've listened to me, you've lost more money than you've won.
Well, they're trying to tell you, Sam.
That's right.
But you know, the at the end of the day, you're going to come in as governor. You know, what's the first agency you say priority day one? That's the one that I'm going to overhaul.
CYFD.
Okay.
It has to be. We're talking about the safety of far too many young people being jeopardized. We're talking about a population within our state that is so vulnerable. And we're talking about an agency that has so many good people working in it, but is so chronically understaffed. And on any given day, they have a 30% vacancy rate right now on their jobs. I'm not so sure that abuse and neglect and delinquency, those three things should not be separated more than they are, so that we can get a better handle on juvenile crime over here on the delinquency side, a better handle on abuse and neglect on the foster home side and everything that they do. But I will tell you one thing we have to do. We have to staff up immediately, because you can't expect, if there's a 30% vacancy rate, that means that the 70% that's left, they'll cut down all the administrative side of that, and maybe there's a 50% people left doing the work of dealing with the most troubled kids in our state. And they are working double overtime shifts now with the most troubled kids. What happens to them? They get burnt out. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to the kids. We have to staff up. And CYFD isn't the only place that we have to staff up. There's a lot of agencies that we have to staff up, but CYFD is certainly the one that's just, yelling, screaming out there, help. And I want to focus on that. That's the one agency I think that we have to immediately get some help for and some relief.
Like I said before, Sam, if there's anybody who can staff up an agency fairly quickly, it's you. I've seen you do it in the DA's office. You came in, you had similar numbers when you walked in the door, and you did it pretty quickly.
We hired 80 attorneys in 3 years so far. We've hired over 180 people, other support staff. We really have.
And that's the dynamic that's interesting about that people don't think about these agencies, right? It's not just the department head. It's not the division director. Of course, those people set the tone for how the agency operates.
Yes.
But unless you're giving them the ancillary staff to support them and uphold them and help them complete the mission, then they're never going to get there. And like you said, they're going to get overwhelmed. They're going to get burnt out. And then they're just not going to, want to work.
And it's harder to do your job if you're having a trouble staying awake because you're on 16 hours now. We've got corrections officers out there right now who are working 16-hour shifts with some of the most dangerous people in the state. That's not acceptable either. Listen, we always have to make sure we take care of people, but we really have to take care of our New Mexico state workers. Some of them do amazing work. I don't think we recognize all the work that they do. Some of them don't get the job done. I'll be very frank with you. But so many of them are put in positions where it makes it really hard for them to do their job. And the simple thing of hiring more people, the prisons, we need to hire more corrections officers. Whether or not we like that or not because of what that means, here's what it means. It means safety for the people that work in those prisons. It means safety for the inmates. It means safety for all of that. We should be doing that. That's common sense governance as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And I mean, Sam, those are the things that make you a different type of candidate and person. I mean, a lot of folks, if you have as much of a memory as I do about Sam, everybody, there used to be a comment in town that, you had never met a camera you didn't like, right?
No, it was the most dangerous place in Albuquerque was between me and a television camera. So one of you guys did that to me, and the thing stuck. And everywhere I went, I haven't heard it lately, thank God.
Yeah.
But you know,
but that's only because, Sam, in all honesty, you've grown. You've grown. You're one of these guys that I literally have known you for the span of your political career.
yes, you have.
And I can honestly say Sam is a guy that has grown. Now, the interesting part about this race is that you have a potential opponent. I don't know if they've certified everybody yet or not.
No, they certified
Yeah.
Deb and I.
So it's you and Deb. One of the funny things is that to me is you both were chairs of the party
Yeah.
in different times.
Yep.
And so if you had to say something about your opponent that was positive, what would it be?
She's an extremely pleasant, nice person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that a lot of folks at the end of the day are going to look at both of you for different reasons. And the fun part for me to watch in all of this is to watch you in this race. I've been thoroughly enjoying watching Sam Bregman being out there. And one of the things that you talked about earlier in our interview is about where ideas come from, and that sometimes you're not the guy that has to always have the best and brightest ideas, and you're looking forward to it. I think that right now there's a lot of discussion in the Democratic Party about who has the best ideas and where they come from, and I'm not too sure that everybody's listening to everybody about where the best ideas come from.
Sisto, I'll tell you something. If you have trouble, and if you have trouble falling asleep tonight, I have 189 pages of policy on my website for you to read.
Well, and the funny,
it's 14 different policies.
well,
I'm a policy guy.
It wasn't because I was having a hard time sleeping, Sam. I'm probably one of the few people that actually read the policy manual that you have. And quite honestly, what I've appreciated about you is that you have done that, is that you have looked at this idea's on the shelf. Why aren't we using it? Why did we miss this opportunity? And just because that was, it's a lawyer thing, right? I mean, it's got to be when you're what is what is that law clerk at 3 a.m. when he finds extraordinary dissent that overturns some other piece of law in the middle of the night? I mean, I don't fault you for that. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look at what's been put forward before and say, we could do this and we could do it better.
Well, there's a lot of things, and I don't expect everybody to agree with everything I put out there.
Yeah.
But at least what I'm trying to do is express I have a blueprint. I have an idea. I have a direction I want to go. By all means, criticize it, do something with it, but let's talk about it more. And you know this. I've been challenging Deb to some debates because I think people deserve to know where we stand on the issues, right?
Well, and I mean
that's kind of democracy, isn't it?
That's kind of no. I mean it's been very funny to me in that conversation that you've been harping for, and I say harping, and I don't mean it as a deal because we both know that ain't going to happen. But at the end of the day, why shouldn't you? Why shouldn't both of the candidates be putting themselves forward and having a face-to-face conversation? We could have had a wonderful dialogue before the election season about who you both are.
Yeah.
And some of it is, we admittedly here at Cactus Crossfire, we're consultants. We know the game. We know who tells candidates what to do and what not to do. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, at some point, you're going to have to justify yourself to the voters.
Yes.
And you've already said here today about what you're going to do in your first 100 days. You've said what metrics you're going to hold yourself accountable to as governor. You've already talked about your leadership style. But, and even in all of that, Sam, I mean, even reading your policies, you and I have had we've run into each other other than the racetrack folks. I know that we've kind of joked about that a lot, but there's been times where I've come to you and I said, Sam, we need to be careful about how we roll that out, how we do that, especially when it comes to prosecuting kids, right? And you and I've talked about it, and when I come to you and I tell you, you look at me and you're like, God damn it, he's going to start on me again.
It's
but,
okay.
But it's
That's
okay.
That's what I need to hear.
But
I need to hear what other people are thinking too.
Yeah.
Always, and I'll always be receptive to that.
Yeah.
No, we won't. I will not ever always agree with everybody. We don't always agree, but we can at least have those discussions.
Yeah, well, what we agree on is that we have great hats. That's what we can always
We
agree on.
and we can agree on that. You're now a Chicago Cubs fan, right?
Well, the interesting part about that is I grew up in Albuquerque, and
So that means you're a Dodger fan?
Yeah, I'm a Dodger
Oh my
fan.
gosh.
I'm a Dodger fan. So, and that's the interesting part. Is like it's funny because my partner Eddie was going to ask you this question because Alex, we're all proud of him.
Yes, he's a New Mexico boy, Albuquerque boy.
He's an Albuquerque boy, and we're so proud of seeing him. I mean,
Yes.
when I love my friends from Houston because they were when he was with the Astros.
Yes.
I used to tease those guys all the time and say, "You guys ain't shit without a New Mexican." So there you go.
Right.
So, but now, he's joined the Cubs. And do you think that'll elevate the squad? And who's your team?
Well, of course, my team is the Cubs. last year, my team was the Red Sox. Before that, the 9 years before that,
Yeah.
it was the Houston Astros.
Yeah.
So no, it's the Cubs. I think he will elevate the team. Hey, Alex, I'm bragging now about my son, so please give me a little leeway on this. But he loves the game. He's focused like a laser beam on it. He loves his teammates. He's already told me a couple times. We talk just about every day. He tells me, I love this team. I love who I'm playing with. I think we got a shot. Dad, spring hope's eternal, right? Every team thinks they're going to win a World Series on the first day of spring training, right?
Yeah.
So the first day of spring training was yesterday, I guess. So he's ready to go. He's jazzed. But I really do think the Cubs are a playoff team. It's very, very exciting. Listen, you talk full circle. My father was the lawyer for the Washington Senators back in the day. Because of him, I got to go and hang out with Ted Williams, who was the manager of the Senators at that time. Thus, my love of the game of baseball. My dad passed it down to me. I passed it down to Alex. Now Alex is representing all of New Mexico on the big stage. It's pretty cool.
And now the coolest part is that you get to be grandpa.
Oh, 100%. And by the way, now we're really going to talk about bragging.
Yeah.
My 3-year-old, his oldest son,
He's
got one younger than 3. My 3-year-old grandson may have the best 3-year-old baseball swing of anybody in the country.
And and Sam, I heard you say this, that you were giving this advice to Alex, is that, you may know how to play baseball, but you never raised a baseball player.
No, he's never raised a big leaguer. I have a track record. I'm batting pretty good on that issue, so I would like him to not mess up the swing of his own son.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having Sam Bregman. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We appreciate you visiting with us.
fun.
Always great to see you.
Great to see
and
you.
I will see you around the track soon, my friend.
Yes, you will.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, pal.